This is in no way an extensive look into the Zero, but rather a brief overview. Let's get into it. The A6M Zero was one of the most innovative and successful fighter aircraft of the war and dominated the skies of the early Pacific theater. But its gradual demise throughout the war is what is left in the minds of many. Through its creation and nearly unreachable specifications, a lightweight, maneuverable, and far-reaching aircraft was forged. But its greatest assets were also considered its biggest handicaps. This double-edged sword would lead to its downfall. The island nation of Japan would begin to fail and crumble under the strain of war, and so with it did the Zero. During the 1930s, a rush to create a suitable and advanced aircraft was underway across the world, and Japan did not want to be left in the dust. The Japanese government put forth a set of specifications for the new aircraft, and at the time they seemed to be intangible. For many, the task was too laborious and difficult, creating cutting-edge technology from nearly thin air. Many attempted to do so, all but one fell short: Jiro Horikoshi. A young engineer from the University of Tokyo, now working for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, took the challenge head-on. He met the specifications with flying colors after working around the set parameters. The Zero was capable of long-range flights due to its lightweight, which in turn reduced fuel consumption. It was constructed of a new, top-secret, highly durable alloy known as duralumin. The Zero's maneuverability and speed were unmatched at the time as a result of its design. Weight reduction was implemented as much as possible during the creation of the A6M. Having the lightest aircraft possible meant greater speed and handling for the pilots. While it had little to no armor protection, the thought process was, you don't require armor if you don't get hit. The skilled Japanese pilots at the time were more than capable of avoiding such damage. As previously stated, the Japanese Zero was nimble and moved almost without effort, as a result of its extremely light construction. This asset would now become its shortcoming. U.S. pilots, during the infancy of the war in the Pacific, struggled to counter the Zero, but as luck would have it, this would soon change. In 1942, a Zero was badly damaged near the Akutan Island over the Alaskan Territory, and the pilot was forced to make a crash landing. The landing gear of the Zero would get stuck into the bog-like soil on impact, flipping the plane belly up and killing the pilot, named Tadayoshi Koga. The Zero was soon located in July of 1942 and found to be in near-perfect condition, the first flyable captured Zero. Masataki Okayama, a lieutenant general, was quoted as saying the loss of an intact Zero was no less serious than the Japanese defeat at the Battle of Midway. This was the beginning of the end for the Japanese air presence in the Pacific, as the US now, with a flyable example, learned all of the Zero's shortcomings and flaws. First being its engine, which was outdated by that point and somewhat underpowered. It also tended to sputter or die during steep climbs due to its float carburetor and inability to use fuel injection. Secondly, the Zero did not maneuver well at top speed and became somewhat unwieldy. It was best suited at lower speed encounters. The Zero also lacked self-sealing fuel lines, which meant, if hit in a crucial area, it tended to burst into flames. This knowledge was invaluable and was now essential in the training of U.S. pilots. As a result of this, U.S. pilots could now comfortably circumvent the few advantages the Zero once held. The Japanese pilots could at this point barely compete. Not only had the U.S. cracked the code of the Zero, our planes had become far more advanced by this point in the war, superior to the Zero in practically every way imaginable. The aircraft itself was only half of the failure. As the war progressed, more and more pilots and Zeros were lost, contributing to further strain on Japanese production. With already limited materials and manpower, the quality of not only the aircraft, but the pilots began to drop off drastically, forcing what many would consider last-ditch efforts on the part of the Japanese. With the Japanese Empire on their heels and on the doorstep of defeat, they had no other option. This is where the infamous kamikaze came to fruition. With young, ill-equipped pilots, the Japanese sought to inflict as much damage as possible at any cost. They would line the body of the Zeros with explosives and send these young pilots to hopefully wreak havoc on the encroaching U.S. ships at the cost of their own lives. These kamikaze attacks were mostly unsuccessful, usually with the Japanese pilots either being shot down prior to reaching the target or just simply careening into the water below due to the lack of training. Although these attacks did have the added effect of lowering the morale of U.S. crewmen aboard these vessels, instilling a constant fear of attack. Ultimately, this once commanding aircraft was now reduced to the role of a mere man-guided missile. The Zero had been the predominant force in the Pacific just a few years earlier, with little to no competition, and now it was the lowest rung on the totem pole. Its decline was swift and violent. The war was over, but Japan never relented, refusing to admit defeat. They would fight until the last man stood, the last Zero flew, and the last remaining swath of blood-soaked soil fell from Japanese hands. The Zero was a dependable warhorse and is remembered as such, along with the valiant pilots who flew it, although its legacy is shadowed by its tremendous fall from grace. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions or disagree with anything I've said, let me know in the comments. As always, a like is greatly appreciated. Until next time on Tipton Bros.